The warning sirens echoed through Sentinel-9 at exactly 0600 hours. Captain Elena Vasquez was already awake, staring at the tactical display that showed what everyone had feared for the past 3 days. 412 contacts. 412 Krell warships, arranged in perfect geometric formations. Sitting at the edge of human space, like a wall of death, Dotalina had been a ship captain for 15 years. She had fought pirates, rescued stranded colonists, and even survived a reactor breach that killed half her crew. None of that prepared her for this moment. The Krell Dominion had sent an entire fleet to crush humanity's frontier colonies, and her small garrison stood directly in their path. "Status report," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Lieutenant Chun looked up from his console. His face was pale. 18 frigates operational, Captain. 3 defense platforms online. Total personnel at 2,043. He paused. High Command is sending reinforcements. 12 ships. They'll arrive in 60 hours. 30 ships against 400. The mathematics were brutal and simple. They were going to die here. Elena walked to the observation window. Below her, the colony world of New Harbinger spun slowly in the darkness. 3 million people lived down there. Farmers, miners, teachers, children. They had come here looking for a better life, trusting that humanity's military would keep them safe. Now that promise was about to be tested in the worst possible way. "Open a channel to all ships and stations," Elena ordered. The comm officer nodded. "Channel open, Captain." Elena took a breath. "This is Captain Vasquez to all defensive forces. You've all seen the tactical display by now. You know what we're facing. The Krell Empire has been expanding for 3,000 years. They've conquered 40 species and never lost a major battle. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. By every logical calculation, we should surrender right now." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But I'm not going to do that. Neither are you. Because down on that planet are 3 million people who deserve a chance to live. Because if we fold here, the Krell will roll through every human colony without stopping. And because sometimes the logical choice isn't the right choice." Elena could see her crew straightening at their stations. She saw jaws set, hands steady on controls. "We're going to make them bleed for every inch of space. We're going to buy high command time to organize a real defense. And we're going to show these aliens that humans don't break easily." Vasquez out. As the channel closed, her chief engineer approached. Marcus Chen was 50 years old, gray-haired, and had been working on ships since he was 16. He carried a data pad and wore an expression Elena had learned to recognize over the years. Marcus had an idea. "Captain, I've been reviewing our first contact data from 5 years ago," Marcus said. "The Krell shield technology. Their weapons. Even their formation patterns. Everything is incredibly advanced, but it's also rigid. Predictable. They haven't changed their tactical doctrine in centuries." "They haven't needed to," Elena replied. "When you win every battle, why change?" "Exactly." Marcus pulled up a holographic display. "Look at this. Their shield harmonic cycle on a fixed frequency. Their formations maintain precise geometric spacing. Even their communication protocols follow strict hierarchies. Everything about them is sophisticated but inflexible." Elena studied the data. "You think we can exploit that?" "I think we're smaller, older, and weaker than they are. But we're also desperate, and desperate people get creative." Marcus pointed to the asteroid field between Sentinel-9 and New Harbinger. "We know that terrain. They don't. And I have some ideas about the mining equipment on the planet's surface." Before Elena could respond, the tactical officer called out. "Captain, the Krell fleet is moving. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was deep and resonant, translated by their computer systems into flat, emotionless English. Humans of the frontier colonies, you have entered space claimed by the Krell Dominion. Your presence is unlawful. Surrender immediately, and you will be relocated to designated territories. Resist, and you will be eliminated. You have one planetary rotation to decide. The channel cut off 20-4 hours. That was all the time humanity had left. Elena turned to her crew. Marcus, start working on those ideas. I want options, no matter how crazy they sound. Tactical, I need detailed maps of the asteroid field. Navigation, plot every possible retreat route. Communications, get me a direct line to the colonial governor on New Harbinger. The crew exploded into motion. Elena watched them work, these 2,000 people who were all that stood between the Krell and 3 million civilians. She thought about her sister back on Earth, about the nephew she'd never met, about all the little ordinary moments that made life worth living. The Krell thought this would be easy. They thought humans would see their massive fleet and give up without a fight. They didn't understand that sometimes being outgunned and outmatched just made you more dangerous. Not less. Marcus returned an hour later with preliminary plans. What he proposed was insane. It involved turning civilian mining equipment into weapons, using outdated cargo haulers as improvised bombers, and tactics that violated every military regulation in the book. Elena looked at the plans and smiled for the first time in days. Do it. Tell the engineers to strip every regulation they can think of. I want every crazy idea tested. We're not fighting by their rules anymore. As the clock counted down to the Krell deadline, Sentinel-9 transformed from a military outpost into something humanity had always been good at, a workshop for desperate innovation. In shipyards and engineering bays, crews welded, modified, and invented. Down on New Harbinger, mining supervisors received very strange requests from orbit and started making equally strange modifications to their equipment. The Krell were coming with overwhelming force, advanced technology, and 3,000 years of military tradition. Humanity was responding with duct tape, improvisation, and a stubborn refusal to accept the inevitable. War was coming, and neither side truly understood what they were about to face. The Krell attack began exactly 24 hours after their ultimatum expired. They didn't bother with subtlety or strategy. Why would they? They had 400 ships against 30 human vessels. The first wave hit Sentinel-9's outer perimeter like a hammer. Plasma lances tore through the darkness, their blue-white beams designed to cut through starship armor like paper. The defense platform Delta-3 lasted exactly 40 seconds before its shields collapsed and its reactor went critical. 800 people died in that explosion. Captain Vasquez watched from her command chair as the tactical display lit up with damage reports. All ships, fall back to the asteroid field. Pattern Echo 7. Move now. The human frigates scattered like insects, their engines burning at maximum thrust. They were outgunned, and everyone knew it. But running directly away would just get them killed faster. Instead, they dove into the dense asteroid field that orbited between Sentinel-9 and New Harbinger. The Krell followed, their massive warships maintaining those perfect geometric formations, even as they navigated through spinning rocks and debris. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, watching hundreds of alien ships move in synchronized precision. They're maintaining formation even here. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo observed from her tactical station. She was young, only 26, but she had the kind of mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. That's their weakness, Captain. They're so focused on formation integrity, they're limiting their maneuverability. Can we use that? Elena asked. Sarah's fingers flew across her console. Maybe, if we hit them from multiple vectors at once, They'll have to choose between breaking formation or taking hits. Either way, we win something. Elena activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Vasquez. We're going to use the asteroids as cover and strike from multiple angles. Don't try to destroy them. Just sting them and run. Make them react instead of act. If we're going to die here, let's at least teach them our names. The human ships split into groups of 3, each team taking a different vector through the asteroid field. The frigate Defiant led the first attack, emerging from behind a spinning rock twice its size. Its railguns opened fire, hurling solid metal slugs at relativistic speeds toward a Krull cruiser. The Krull shields held, but the impact forced the cruiser to adjust its position. That adjustment created a gap in their formation, and the frigates Hammer and Justice exploited it, raking another Krull ship with weapons fire before diving back into the asteroid cover dot. It wasn't much. The damage they inflicted was minimal, but it was something, and something was better than nothing. Down on New Harbinger's surface, Marcus Chen was having the strangest day of his engineering career. He stood in Mining Station 12, surrounded by equipment designed to extract and process ore. Massive magnetic accelerators capable of launching 1,000-ton containers into orbital transfer trajectories lined the facility. "You want us to shoot rocks at spaceships," the station supervisor said. Her name was Rita Alvarez, and she looked at Marcus like he'd lost his mind. "Not rocks," Marcus corrected. "Ore containers filled with the densest metals you have, traveling at 0.3% light speed. Think of them as very large, very fast bullets." Rita stared at him. Then she started laughing. "That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard." She paused. "I love it. But the targeting systems on these launchers are designed for predictable orbital trajectories, not moving targets." "I know. That's why I brought these." Marcus gestured to the 3 techs behind him, each carrying modified targeting computers. "We've adapted some old missile guidance software. It's not perfect, but it should give you about 30% accuracy at combat ranges." 30%? Rita shook her head. "In mining, that would be a disaster." "In war, that's a miracle," Marcus replied. "How fast can you get all 12 mining stations ready?" Rita pulled up her work schedule and started making calls. "Give me 6 hours. And pray to whatever god you believe in that these launchers don't explode when we fire them in rapid succession. They're not built for that kind of stress." Back in orbit, the battle was intensifying. The human ships had lost 3 more frigates, and defense platform Beta 5 was listing badly with its reactor barely contained. But they had also managed to destroy 4 Krull ships and damage a dozen more. The Krull commander, war leader Thexkull, watched the battle from his flagship's command throne with growing irritation. These humans were supposed to break after the first assault. Instead, they were scurrying through the asteroids like vermin, striking and running, refusing to engage in proper combat. "Pursue them into the asteroid field," he ordered. "Destroy every ship." His tactical officer hesitated. "War leader, our formations will be disrupted by the terrain." "Then adapt the formations. I want these humans eliminated within the next cycle." The Krull fleet pressed deeper into the asteroid field, their formations flexing and adjusting but never truly breaking. It went against 3,000 years of military tradition to abandon formation integrity, even when terrain demanded it. Sarah Okonkwo saw the pattern immediately. "Captain, they're predictable. Every time we hit them from the left, they rotate their formation 30 degrees clockwise. Every time. They're following a response doctrine that's probably written in stone somewhere in their military academy." Elena felt a spark of hope. "If we know how they'll react, we can lead them into traps." "Exactly. I'm uploading new tactical plans to all ships now." The next 2 hours became a deadly game of chess played in 3 dimensions. Human ships would strike from one angle. The Krull would respond with their pre-programmed rotation, And suddenly, they'd find themselves facing a different human ship that had predicted their movement. It still wasn't enough to turn the tide, but it kept humanity in the fight. Then, Marcus's modifications went live. The first ore container launched from Mining Station 7 at 0800 hours. It was a cylinder 15 meters long, packed with refined iron ore and traveling at nearly 1,000 kilometers per second. The targeting computer, held together with borrowed algorithms and desperate hope, actually worked. The container hit a Krell destroyer amidships. The impact released kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The destroyer's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, had no idea what to do with a solid object moving at that speed. The ship crumpled like aluminum foil. Direct hit. Marcus shouted, watching from the surface. All stations, commence firing. 12 mining stations opened up simultaneously. 73 ore containers launched into space, each one improvised. Kinetic weapon that would have made any military engineer horrified and impressed at the same time. 16 Krell ships died in that first volley. 23 more were crippled, their hulls breached, their systems failing. On his flagship, Dex Cole stared at the tactical display in disbelief. What are they firing? Those signatures don't match any known weapons. They appear to be industrial launch systems, War Leader. Civilian equipment. Dex Cole felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare: uncertainty. These humans weren't fighting like any species he'd ever encountered. They were breaking every rule of civilized combat, turning mining equipment into weapons, refusing to engage in honorable ship-to-ship battle. Target those surface installations, he commanded. Destroy them immediately. As Krell ships broke formation to bombard New Harbinger's mining stations, Alana Vasquez saw the opportunity she'd been waiting for. The enemy fleet had finally stopped, moving as a unified wall, and started reacting to threats individually. All ships, she transmitted. Now, hit them with everything. The remaining human frigates, now augmented with mining drones, hastily retrofitted with explosive charges, swarmed through the gaps in the Krell formation. It wasn't elegant warfare. It was desperate, chaotic, and improvised. It was also working. The bombardment of New Harbinger's surface began at 1300 hours. Krell plasma lances struck mining stations with surgical precision, turning sophisticated industrial equipment into molten craters. Mining Station 7 disappeared in a flash of superheated atmosphere. Station 3 collapsed as its foundation melted. Station 12, where Marcus had first explained his insane plan to Rita Alvarez, took a direct hit that vaporized everything within a kilometer. Marcus watched from a bunker 300 meters underground, his hands gripping the console so hard his knuckles turned white. The displays showed casualty estimates climbing into the thousands. All those mining technicians, station supervisors, people who had signed up to dig ore from asteroids, not fight an interstellar war. We're down to 6 operational launchers, his assistant reported, but the fabrication plants are ready. We can start producing the mine drones. Marcus pulled up the manufacturing specs. What he designed wasn't elegant. Industrial fabricators, meant to produce replacement parts for mining equipment, had been reprogrammed to churn out simple autonomous drones. Each drone was just a thruster, a basic guidance chip, and 50 kilograms of explosives scavenged from mining charges. They were crude, stupid, and cheap to make. Start production. Maximum output. I want thousands of these things swarming out there within 6 hours. Up in orbit, the battle had transformed into something no military textbook had ever described. The Krell fleet, trying to maintain formation while targeting both the surface installations and the human ships, found themselves pulled in too many directions at once. Their shields were designed to handle concentrated fire from other military vessels, not kinetic ore containers, explosive mining drones, and frigates darting in and out of asteroid cover. Captain Vasquez's ship, the Sentinel's Pride, had taken heavy damage. Her port side engine was offline. Life support was running on backup power, and 2 of her weapons batteries were slag. But she was still fighting. "Captain," picking up movement from the Krull flagship, Sarah Okonkwo called out. "It's repositioning to the center of their formation. I think their commander is getting frustrated." "Good," Elena replied. "Frustrated commanders make mistakes." "What's our ship count?" 9 operational frigates. Both remaining defense platforms are at 40% capacity. The reinforcements from High Command are still 38 hours out. Elena did the math in her head. They destroyed or crippled over 100 Krull ships at this point, an impossible achievement that would be studied in military academies for generations. But it wasn't enough. The Krull still had over 250 functional warships. Eventually, humanity's desperate tricks would run out, and then they'd simply be overwhelmed. "Man, the first wave of mine drones is launching from the surface," the tactical officer reported. Elena pulled up the visual feed. Thousands of tiny dots appeared on the display, each one a flying bomb with just enough intelligence to identify a target and crash into it. They looked like a swarm of angry insects rising from New Harbinger's atmosphere. The Krull point defense systems activated immediately. Laser turrets designed to intercept sophisticated missiles began tracking and destroying the mine drones. For every 10 drones, the Krull shot down 9. But that 10th one got through. And when you launched thousands of drones, those numbers added up fast. A Krull cruiser took 3 drone hits within 30 seconds. Its shields flickered and failed. The 4th drone punched through the hull and detonated inside the ship. The cruiser broke apart, spilling atmosphere and crew into the void. War leader Dex Call watched another ship die and felt something he'd never experienced in battle before: doubt. His fleet had lost over 150 vessels. The humans should have been crushed hours ago, but instead they kept adapting, kept improvising, kept finding new ways to make his superior technology less relevant. "These weapons are primitive," his tactical officer reported. "The drones use basic chemical propulsion. The ore containers are just solid matter fired from magnetic launchers. Nothing they're using is sophisticated. And yet they're killing us," Dex Call said quietly. "How is that possible?" "They're not fighting with honor, war leader. They use civilian equipment, hide behind asteroids, refuse direct engagement. They fight like criminals, not soldiers." Dex Call stared at the tactical display. His entire military career had been built on the principle that superior technology and disciplined tactics would always defeat inferior opponents. But these humans weren't following the rules. They were rewriting them with every desperate innovation. "Concentrate fire on their remaining military vessels," he ordered. "If we eliminate their command structure, the rest will collapse." The Krull fleet began to focus their assault. 3 human frigates disappeared within minutes, overwhelmed by concentrated plasma fire. Defense platform Alpha 2 exploded when its reactor containment failed. The noose was tightening. On the surface, Marcus watched his fabrication plants working at maximum capacity. Drones were pouring out now, 3,000 every hour, each one a small metal coffin designed to trade its existence for a piece of a Krull ship. It was working, but barely. His communications console chimed. It was Captain Vasquez. "Marcus, I need something new. The drones are helping, but we're still losing ships faster than we can replace them. What else have you got?" Marcus pulled up his list of increasingly desperate ideas. Most of them were theoretical at best, suicidal at worst. But one caught his attention. It was something he'd considered and dismissed because it seemed too crazy even by their current standards. "Captain, you know how the Krull fleet operates on a networked command system, right? Everything runs through their flagship. Yes, we picked that up from their communications traffic. Very hierarchical. Very rigid. What if we could disrupt that network? Just for a few seconds. It would be like cutting the head off a snake. The body would keep moving, but it would be uncoordinated, confused. How would we do that? Marcus took a breath. An electromagnetic pulse. Large scale. We'd need to get close to their flagship and detonate it. The pulse would cascade through their interconnected systems. We don't have EMP weapons, Marcus. No, but we have mining reactor containment systems. If we overload one and detonate it in close proximity to their flagship, the electromagnetic discharge would be enormous. It would probably fry our own systems too, but theirs would be worse because they're all networked together. There was a long pause. That's insane, I know. It would be a suicide mission for whoever delivers it. I know that too. Another pause. Build it. I'll find volunteers. We're out of sane options anyway. 3 hours later, Marcus stood in a cargo bay, watching his team install a modified reactor into an old mining hauler. The ship was 40 years old, held together with replacement parts and prayer. It was also small enough to potentially slip past. Krell sensors if disguised as debris. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo walked into the bay. She was wearing a pressure suit and carried a helmet under her arm. "I'm piloting it," she said simply. Marcus started to protest, but she cut him off. "I'm the best pilot we have under 30. I know how to read Krell formation patterns. And I've studied enough of their sensor data to know how to mimic random asteroid tumbling. It has to be me." Marcus wanted to argue, but she was right. This wasn't the kind of mission you assigned to someone. It was the kind you volunteered for because nobody else could do it better. "The detonation sequence is automated," he explained, showing her the controls. "Once you're within 500 meters of their flagship, activate this. You'll have 90 seconds to get clear in an escape pod." Will 90 seconds be enough? Honestly, I have no idea. The math says yes, but this is all theoretical. Sarah smiled. It didn't quite reach her eyes. "Then I guess we're about to find out if your math is good." 6 hours later, the mining hauler launched from New Harbinger's surface. It was running on minimal power, tumbling through space in what looked like a random trajectory caused by engine failure. To Krell sensors, it appeared to be just another piece of debris in a battlefield, full of destroyed ships and shattered asteroids. Sarah lay strapped into the pilot's seat, watching the Krell flagship grow larger in her view screen. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her hands were steady on the controls. Around her, the human fleet was launching what appeared to be a massive coordinated assault, drawing the Krell's attention away from one small, crippled mining ship drifting toward their flagship. Got 500 meters. 400. 300. Her proximity alarm chirped softly. It was time. Sarah activated the detonation sequence and ran for the escape pod. The electromagnetic pulse from the overloaded mining reactor spread through space like an invisible wave of chaos. It hit the Krell flagship first, cascading through its sophisticated computer networks and communication systems. Every screen went dark. Every sensor went blind. Every connection to the rest of the fleet severed in an instant. War leader Dexkol felt his command throne lose power beneath him. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in red. His tactical displays were dead. His communication arrays silent. For the first time in 3 decades of commanding ships, he was completely cut off from his fleet. "Status report," he roared. "All primary systems offline, war leader. The pulse hit our network systems. Backups are initializing, but it will take time. Time they didn't have." The pulse had jumped from the flagship through the Krell's interconnected command network, blinding over 200 ships simultaneously. For exactly 93 seconds, the most powerful fleet in this sector of the galaxy was deaf, dumb, And helpless. Captain Vasquez saw the change on her tactical display. Every Krell ship suddenly stopped coordinating. Their formation, maintained with such precision throughout the entire battle, simply dissolved. Ships drifted, unable to communicate, unable to coordinate defensive fire. "All units," she transmitted. "This is it. Everything we have. Fire now." The 6 remaining human frigates unleashed every weapon they possessed. The 2 crippled defense platforms, running on backup power and spite, added their firepower. The ore launchers on New Harbinger's surface fired their last containers. And the swarm of mine drones, now numbering over 7,000, converged on the paralyzed Krell fleet like a cloud of mechanical locusts. The Krell flagship took concentrated fire from 3 frigates simultaneously. Its shields were still functional, running on independent backup power, but without coordinated point defense from the surrounding ships, it couldn't intercept everything. Railgun slugs punched through the shield generators. Missiles found their marks. Mine drones crashed into its hull by the dozens. Inside the flagship, Dexcal watched his ship die around him. Explosions rippled through deck after deck. The hull breached in 17 places. His crew, trained for 3 years in the finest military academy in the Dominion, died at their stations trying to save a ship that was already lost. "Abandon ship," he finally ordered, the words bitter in his mouth. "All hands, evacuate immediately." The flagship began to break apart, its massive frame splitting along the keel. Escape pods launched in all directions, carrying the survivors away from the dying vessel. 93 seconds after the pulse, the Krell ship systems began to come back online. But those 93 seconds had cost them everything. Over 40 additional ships had been destroyed or crippled while their systems reset. The flagship was gone. Their formation was shattered. And for the first time in recorded Krell military history, a fleet found itself losing to an inferior opponent. The new Krell commander, a war captain who had just been promoted in the worst possible way, looked at his tactical display and made a decision that would be debated in Krell military circles for generations. He ordered a retreat. The surviving Krell ships, still outnumbering the humans by more than 20-1, began jumping to FTL. They didn't retreat in neat formations or organized waves. They fled, each ship calculating its own escape vector, abandoning the battlefield in a chaotic exodus that betrayed their shock and confusion. Elena Vasquez watched them go, barely believing what she was seeing. Her ship had lost life support on 3 decks. Her weapons were exhausted. Her crew was down to less than half strength. But they had won. "Confirm the Krell retreat," she said quietly. "Send the all-clear signal to New Harbinger." The bridge crew erupted in cheers. People were crying, laughing, embracing. They had survived. Against impossible odds, against every logical prediction, humanity had held the line. Elena let them celebrate for a moment, then cleared her throat. Status report on Lieutenant Okonkwo's escape pod. The tactical officer wiped tears from his eyes and checked his console. "Pod located." "She's alive, Captain. Injured, but stable. Recovery team is en route." Elena closed her eyes and allowed herself one deep breath of relief. Sarah had made it. Not everyone had been so lucky. Down on New Harbinger's surface, Marcus Chen walked through the ruins of Mining Station 12. The bombardment had turned it into a landscape of twisted metal and melted rock. He found Rita Alvarez's body near what used to be the main control room. She had stayed at her post, launching ore containers until the Krell plasma lance had vaporized the station around her. Marcus knelt beside her. This woman he'd barely known for a day, but who had helped him turn a crazy idea into a weapon that saved millions. There would be a memorial. There would be medals and ceremonies. But right now, there was just a quiet acknowledgement that victory had come at a terrible price. The final casualty count took days to compile. Over 4,000 humans had died. 13 ships destroyed completely. 2 defense platforms reduced to scrap. Mining facilities across New Harbinger devastated. The colony's infrastructure would take years to rebuild, but 3 million civilians had survived. Humanity had proven something to the galaxy that no one had believed possible. A young species, barely 3 centuries into space exploration, had defeated the Krell Dominion through sheer ingenuity and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. 3 weeks later, Admiral James Okafor arrived at New Harbinger with the reinforcements that had come too late for the battle, but were desperately needed for the aftermath. He toured the battlefield, studied the tactics, interviewed the survivors. What he learned changed humanity's entire military doctrine overnight. "You turned mining equipment into weapons," he said to Marcus during their meeting. "You use civilian ships as bombers. You built weapons from fabricators designed to make replacement parts. None of this should have worked." "It barely did work," Marcus replied. "We got lucky. The Krell were rigid, predictable. They couldn't adapt fast enough to chaos. That's not luck. That's the human advantage." Okafor pulled up tactical data on his display. Every species in the galaxy follows the same pattern. They develop technology. They build military doctrines around that technology. They calcify into predictable patterns. But humans? We improvise. We innovate. We look at mining equipment and see weapons. We turn desperate survival into battlefield advantages. He turned to Marcus. "I'm taking everything you did here and spreading it across the entire fleet. Not the specific tactics, but the mindset. The willingness to break rules and improvise solutions. Because you're right, we got lucky this time. But if we institutionalize that creative thinking, if we build adaptability into our doctrine instead of rigidity, we won't need luck next time." 6 months later, news of humanity's victory at New Harbinger spread throughout the galaxy. The Krell, humiliated by their defeat, pulled back from human space entirely. Other species, previously dismissive of humanity's military capabilities, suddenly began reassessing their positions. Humanity hadn't just won a battle. They had announced themselves to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They were the species that turned mining equipment into warships, that valued improvisation over tradition, that refused to accept defeat even when mathematics said they should. Captain Elena Vasquez, promoted to admiral and given command of humanity's frontier defenses, stood on the observation deck of the new Sentinel station. Below her, New Harbinger continued its slow recovery. New mining stations were being built, stronger and better defended. The colony was growing again, refugees from other threatened worlds seeking the protection of the species that had done the impossible. Sarah Okonkwo, recovered from her injuries and promoted to commander, approached with a datapad. "The Krell have sent a formal communication, Admiral. They're requesting negotiations." Elena smiled. Translation: they want to make sure we don't do to their core worlds what we did to their fleet. Probably. Are we going to negotiate? Eventually. But first, we're going to make sure every colony, every outpost, every mining station in human space has the ability to defend itself. We're going to spread Marcus's innovations everywhere. We're going to make sure that if anyone attacks humanity again, they'll face the same creative chaos the Krell did. Elena looked out at the stars. At the vast expanse of space humanity was just beginning to truly explore. Out there were species with technology centuries ahead of Earth's. Out there were empires that had conquered dozens of worlds. Out there were threats humanity couldn't even imagine yet. But humanity had something those ancient empires had forgotten in their long centuries of dominance. They had the ability to look at any situation, no matter how hopeless, and find a way to turn it into an advantage. They had the willingness to break every rule if breaking rules meant survival. They had the creativity born of desperation and the audacity to believe that impossible. Odds just meant you had to be more clever. The Battle of New Harbinger would be remembered not just as humanity's first major military victory in space, but as the moment when the galaxy learned a fundamental truth about the species from Earth. Underestimate humans at your own peril, because they would turn your advantages into your weaknesses and find victory in places you never thought to look. War leader Dex Call, stripped of his rank and exiled to a frontier monitoring station as punishment for his defeat, understood this better than any other Krell. He spent his days watching long-range scans of human space, watching them expand and grow and fortify their worlds with the same desperate creativity they had shown in battle. He had learned something the hard way that the rest of the galaxy was just beginning to understand. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their numbers or their military might. It was their refusal to fight fair, their willingness to improvise, and their absolute conviction that there was always a way to win if you were creative enough to find it. The humans had a saying. He'd learned, necessity is the mother of invention. The Krell had given humanity necessity in the form of overwhelming force. In return, humanity had invented a new kind of warfare that turned strength into weakness and desperation into victory. It was a lesson the galaxy would not soon forget.